The afternoon heat over Eco West didn't just shimmer, it burned like judgment. On Sunrise Bridal Lane, Zuri, 8 months along ankles, swollen pride, stubborn balanced a bowl of water sachets and 1,000 quiet prayers. One misstep, one hand on a glossy black car, one rich glittering laugh that sliced the air Belinda's. A slap thundered, a gasp tore loose. Water met pavement, hers, not the sachets. As crowds stared, a single pair of eyes refused to look away Cato's. In that blink of cruelty, 3 lives collided, power, poverty, and the truth that will not stay buried. From a hospital corridor to a storm of family walls and public shame, mercy will meet pride and love will be asked to prove itself in daylight. Before we dive in, tell us where you're watching from and what time it is for you right now. Drop your location and local time in the comments. And if stories of justice, redemption, and second chances move, you hit subscribe so you never miss the next chapter. The sun over Eco West did not shine like a blessing that afternoon, it blazed like a curse. The streets of Sunrise Bridal Lane boiled with noise and color. Shop windows shimmered with rows of white wedding gowns, their lace veils glistening like frost in the furnace. Customers bargained in raised voices, clutching rolls of sparkling fabric, while impatient drivers honked their horns as though noise itself could move traffic forward. Amid this chaos, Zuri walked slowly, balancing a blue plastic bowl on her head. Inside the bowl floated sachets of pure water, half-melted ice, clinking faintly with each cautious step. Her body, however, felt heavier than the bowl she carried. At 27, Zuri's back ached constantly, her feet swollen until her worn slippers cut into her skin. Beads of sweat trailed down her cheeks, dripping into the neckline of her faded dress. She whispered softly to her unborn child, a rhythm she repeated every day as though words could postpone fate. "Please, my little one," she murmured, one hand pressing gently against her stomach. "Not today. Mommy needs a little more time. Let me finish selling this water, then you may come." People passing gave her brief glances, some sympathetic, others indifferent. But Zuri had grown used to indifference. She had no family left in Eco West, only the memory of her mother's voice, reminding her that dignity was not the absence of poverty but the refusal to give up. Rent was due in 3 days, diapers and baby clothes were still missing, and hunger waited like an uninvited guest at her door. To rest was to surrender, and Zuri refused to surrender. The heat thickened as she turned into the heart of Bridal Lane, where she knew thirsty customers were most likely to buy. Brides-to-be and their relatives crowded the street, their laughter sharp against the hum of bargaining. Zuri adjusted the bowl on her head, lifted her chin, and pushed herself forward. Then the pain came. It started as a stab in her lower back, sudden and merciless, gripping her like a fist from inside. Her knees bent involuntarily. She froze in the middle of the pavement. Her breath came short, her lips trembling. She clutched her belly with both hands, muttering through clenched teeth, "No, not now, please." The spasm eased after several seconds, leaving her drenched in sweat. She forced herself to straighten, determined to continue. But halfway down the street, the pain returned, this time sharper, a tearing sensation that nearly dropped her to her knees. Vision blurring, she reached for the nearest object to steady herself, a shiny black SUV parked along the walkway. Her palm pressed against its door. She was not thinking of ownership, only of survival. The metal burned against her damp skin, but it kept her upright as the next wave of pain ripped through her. And then came the voice. "You filthy rat! How dare you touch my baby?" Zuri turned slowly, her face pale beneath sweat. A tall woman stood a few steps away. She wore a gold necklace thick as a chain, a gown that shimmered with imported silk, and heels clicking like authority itself. Her skin glowed under layers of expensive makeup. Every inch of her screamed wealth. Belinda, the fiancée of one of Eco West's most successful young businessmen. But Zuri did not know this, not yet. To her, she was only another customer, though customers rarely looked at her with such disdain. I'm sorry," Zuri stammered, bowing her head slightly. "I had a pain. I needed something to hold." Belinda's nostrils flared. "Are you blind? You did not see my car. This is my child, my baby. And you dare press your filthy hands upon it." Zuri blinked, confused. Baby, only then did she realize Belinda was referring to the car as though it were flesh and blood. "Ma, forgive me," Zuri pleaded, her voice quivering. "It was not my intention." But Belinda's voice rose higher, slicing the air like a whip. Passers-by turned their heads. Traders paused their bargaining. Belinda's eyes blazed. "Wash it now," she shouted. "Use your water. Clean the stain you left." Zuri's lips parted in disbelief. "Please, Ma, if I use the water, I will not have enough to sell." I am very pregnant. I beg you forgive me. The words had barely left her lips when Belinda's hand shot forward. Slap. The sound cracked like thunder across the street. The force knocked Zuri sideways. She stumbled, crashing onto the hot pavement. A gush of warm liquid spread beneath her, soaking her dress. Her heart pounded as realization struck. Her water had broken. Ma! Please, she gasped, clutching her stomach. The baby. My baby is coming. But Belinda was unmoved. She grabbed Zuri's arm and yanked her forward, dragging her like a sack of unwanted goods. You will wash it now, she hissed. A small crowd gathered. Some gasped, some whispered. A few traders stepped forward. Mama Tola from the lace shop raised her hands. Madam, please leave her. She is just a poor woman. She did not mean harm. Alhaji Musa, owner of the shoe stall, added, She is in labor, have mercy. But Belinda shoved Zuri one last time, adjusting her gown with disgust. Next time, know your place. Then she entered her car, slammed the door, and sped away, leaving silence and dust behind. Zuri lay on the pavement, trembling, clutching her belly as contractions rolled like waves. Tears blurred her eyes. Around her, people shook their heads but did nothing more. Not everyone walked away. Across the street, a man had watched the entire ordeal, frozen in disbelief. Kato Asare, young but already one of Eco West's most respected entrepreneurs, stood rooted to the spot. The woman who had just slapped a pregnant hawker into labor was none other than his fiancée. For months, he had described Belinda as gentle, refined, and kind. Now he had seen a different truth, the truth that stripped the veil from his eyes. His jaw tightened. Without thinking, he crossed the road. Madam, he said, crouching beside Zuri. His voice was urgent, steady. You need to get to the hospital. Zuri blinked up at him, dazed pain clouding her mind. Sir, please, she whispered. Don't worry, Kato said, signaling to his driver, who had stood nearby in shock. Chuma, help me lift her. Together they raised Zuri to her feet. She groaned, clutching her belly, but did not resist as they guided her into Kato's waiting car. The cool blast of the air conditioner hit her face, a relief, almost as sharp as the pain. Hospital, Kato ordered. As the car sped through traffic, Zuri closed her eyes, her breath short and fast. Kato sat beside her, watching the sweat roll down her temple, watching her whisper prayers to the unborn child. His chest felt heavy. Each groan from her lips pressed harder against his conscience. You'll be all right, he murmured almost to himself. I'll make sure of it. The car veered through the city's chaos, horns, blaring, vendors, shouting, the scent of roasted corn and exhaust mixing in the heat. But inside the vehicle, there was only urgency, the silent weight of a choice that would alter destinies. Minutes later, the car pulled into the compound of Street Aurora Hospital. Nurses rushed forward with a wheelchair, eyes wide at the sight of Zuri's soaked gown and her twisted expression. She's in labor, Kato explained quickly, his voice tight. Please hurry! They wheeled her in, Kato following close, his heart pounding. The hospital smelled of antiseptic and cold metal. Bright fluorescent lights gleamed overhead, a harsh contrast to the burning sun outside. A doctor in green scrubs appeared, Dr. Mensa, mid-30s, with sharp eyes softened by experience. He glanced at Zuri, then at Kato. Are you her husband? Kato hesitated, then shook his head. No, I found her in distress. Please do whatever is necessary. Dr. Mensa's brows furrowed after a quick examination. She's exhausted, malnourished, and the baby's heartbeat is weak. Natural labor will be dangerous. We must perform emergency surgery at once, or we may lose both mother and child. Zuri's eyes widened. Surgery. Her voice trembled. It's the safest option, the doctor said gently. Does she have family we can call? Zuri shook her head weakly. No. Nobody. Kato stepped closer. Do you understand what the doctor is saying? Zuri's lips trembled, but her eyes held a fierce determination. If it will save my baby, do it. Her hands shook as she signed the consent form. Within moments, nurses wheeled her toward the operating theater. Kato stood frozen in the corridor as the swinging doors closed behind her. The hum of fluorescent lights filled the silence. He lowered himself onto a plastic chair, his heart racing. He didn't know this woman, didn't even know her name. Yet the image of her being dragged on the hot pavement, begging for mercy, burned behind his eyelids, and the voice of Belinda echoed in his head. Filthy rat. Kato pressed his palms together, bowing his head. For the first time in years, he whispered a prayer. God, save her. Save the child. Let them live. The corridor clock ticked slowly. An hour passed each minute, dragging like an eternity. At last, the theater doors swung open. Dr. Mensa emerged, pulling off his gloves. Kato leapt to his feet. Doctor, how is she? The doctor's stern face softened. Congratulations. The woman delivered a baby boy. Both mother and child are alive. Relief crashed over Cato like a wave. He exhaled, shoulders trembling. Thank God. But even as gratitude filled him, another truth pressed hard into his mind. His fiancée had nearly destroyed 2 lives in one moment of arrogance. And Cato knew nothing would ever be the same again. The corridor of Street Aurora Hospital still hummed with the distant rhythm of machines and hurried footsteps. Cato leaned against the cold white wall, the doctor's words echoing in his head. Mother and child are alive. Relief swirled inside him, but so did a knot of guilt, anger, and disbelief. Belinda, his own fiancée, the woman he had planned to marry in less than a month, had caused this tragedy. And yet the woman who had suffered still clung to life, cradling a fragile newborn in her arms. When the nurse finally waved him forward, Cato entered the recovery ward quietly. Zuri lay on the bed pale and weak, but her eyes opened when she heard his footsteps. Her arms wrapped protectively around the tiny bundle swaddled in a white hospital blanket. The baby's small cry filled the air, soft but insistent, like a whisper that refused to be ignored. Cato hesitated at the foot of the bed. For a moment he felt unworthy to approach, as though he were intruding on a sacred scene. But then Zuri raised her head, lips trembling into a faint smile. "Sir," she whispered. Her voice was hoarse, tired. "Thank you for saving me, for saving us." Cato stepped closer. "Don't thank me. It's what any human being should have done." "No," Zuri said softly, shaking her head. Her eyes shone with tears. Others stood and watched. "You acted." Cato's throat tightened. He looked at the baby, whose tiny fist stretched as though trying to grasp the air. "Have you thought of a name?" he asked gently. Zuri smiled faintly and glanced at the baby. "Yes, I will name him Tendo. It means Thanksgiving. But his full name will be Tendo Cato, so that every time I call him, I will remember the man who gave us a second chance." Cato blinked, his chest tightening unexpectedly. He had not expected this honor, nor the strange warmth it carried. I don't know what to say," he murmured. "You don't need to say anything," Zuri replied, her voice weak but certain. "Just live the way you did today. That is enough." For several days, Cato visited the hospital faithfully. Each morning he arrived with fresh fruit formula and small gifts for the baby. The nurses whispered about him in the hallway, the wealthy young businessman who sat beside a poor hawker as though she were his own family. He paid every bill without hesitation, leaving extra at the desk, so Zuri and her son lacked nothing. But though Zuri was grateful, she remained wary. On the 4th day, when she was strong enough to sit upright, she spoke to him with a trace of firmness. "Sir, I owe you my life, but I don't want pity. I don't want to be a burden." Cato leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees. "You are not a burden, Zuri. What happened to you? It was not just cruel, it was criminal. I can't erase that, but I can make sure you're safe now." Zuri lowered her gaze, tracing the edge of the blanket. "Safe. That's all I've ever wanted." When she was discharged, Cato insisted on escorting her and the baby to a better home. Zuri hesitated, but the old room she had rented was now gone, her few belongings scattered by Belinda's men. She finally agreed when Cato promised it was temporary. He rented a modest but clean one-room apartment at Maple Court, a building with stronger walls and kinder neighbors. He furnished it with a sturdy bed, a small cupboard, and a cradle for the baby. Zuri stood in the doorway when she first entered, her eyes glistening. "This is too much," she whispered. "You've already done more than I deserve." "You deserve dignity," Zuri, Cato said firmly, "and your son deserves peace." For the first time since the market incident, Zuri allowed herself to exhale, cradling her baby close. But while Zuri's world began to steady, Cato's was cracking open. Belinda noticed the distance immediately. He no longer answered her calls with enthusiasm. His visits became short, his eyes distracted. At first she assumed it was work pressure. Then suspicion gnawed at her. She had seen him helping that poor hawker. What if his sympathy had turned into something more? Late one evening, Cato returned to his mansion. Belinda greeted him at the door, her smile as polished as ever. "Darling," she said, leaning forward for a kiss. "I've missed you." But Cato stepped past her, his jaw tight. "I'm tired," he said simply. Belinda frowned. "You're always tired these days. Tell me the truth, is there someone else?" Cato turned sharply, his eyes flashing. "Don't you dare ask me that, Belinda. Not after what you did." She froze. "What? What do you mean?" His voice dropped, but it struck like iron. "I saw everything. At Sunrise Lane. You slapped a pregnant woman. You dragged her like trash. You almost killed her child. And you did it without a flicker of mercy. Belinda's face drained of color. Cato, please, it's not what you think. She dirtied my car. I was angry. You know how I get when I'm stressed. Enough. Cato's voice thundered through the room. A car, you call a car your baby while you struck a real mother carrying life inside her. Is that the woman I'm supposed to marry? The woman I've defended to my friends, to my family? Tears welled in Belinda's eyes. Cato, please. I lost control. I thought you would understand. Understand. His laugh was bitter. What I understand is that I cannot spend my life with someone who has no heart. Our engagement is over. Her knees buckled. Cato, no. The invitations are sent. Everyone knows. I don't care. His tone was final. Pack your things. Leave my house. She collapsed onto the sofa, sobbing, but Cato turned away, his mind already elsewhere. He could still hear Zuri's soft voice calling her son's name, Tendo Cato. Meanwhile, at Maple Court, life began to unfold in quiet rhythm. Zuri nursed her baby through sleepless nights, her body still healing. Each Thursday, Cato stopped by with groceries, diapers, tins of milk, small toys. At first, she protested. Sir, please, you've done enough. Cato shook his head. Call me Cato, and I will stop when I am certain you no longer need me. Despite herself, Zuri felt comfort in his presence. He never crossed boundaries, never acted as though his help entitled him to her gratitude. He simply sat, sometimes holding Tendo in his arms, his face softening as the child cooed. But not everyone was pleased. One neighbor, Mama Dora, whispered loudly enough for Zuri to hear. Ah, so this is how it begins. First he helps, then he claims you. Careful, my dear, rich men always come with a price. Zuri bit her lip but said nothing. In her heart, she feared Mama Dora's words might be true. One Thursday evening, after Cato had left, Zuri knelt beside her bed, rocking her baby in her arms. God, she prayed softly, protect me from shame. Protect my son. If Cato's kindness is real, bless him. If it is a trap, expose it. Her prayer hung in the silence, fragile but determined. Belinda, however, was not done. Humiliated by Cato's rejection, she spiraled into obsession. She hired men to follow him to find proof of betrayal. One afternoon, she trailed his car herself, watching as he entered a supermarket. Through the glass doors, she saw him load a basket with diapers, formula, and tiny clothes. Rage twisted her chest. So it's true, she muttered, pulling out her phone to record. He has another family. When Cato drove across town and carried the bags into Maple Court, Belinda's fury reached a boiling point. She waited until he left, then stormed up to Zuri's door. The knock rattled the frame. Zuri opened cautiously, baby in her arms. Her eyes widened when she saw the tall, jeweled woman glaring down at her. You, Belinda spat. So this is where you hide. First my car, now my man. You gutter rat. Before Zuri could answer, Belinda shoved the door open, her voice rising. Is that child his? Tell me now. Tendo stirred and began to cry. Zuri clutched him tighter. No, Ma. Please, you are mistaken. Slap. The blow sent Zuri staggering. Tears stung her eyes, but she held on to her baby desperately. Neighbors rushed in at the commotion. Madam, please leave her alone, Mama Dora cried, stepping between them. Belinda's eyes blazed. This woman will pay. She will not steal from me. The neighbors pulled her out, shouting in protest. Zuri sank into a chair, trembling, whispering prayers as she rocked her screaming child. She had no idea how far Belinda's fury would go. But in that moment, as the sun set over Eco West, one truth burned clear. Zuri's struggle was far from over. Her story and Cato's was only beginning. The apartment at Maple Court still trembled with echoes of the shouting. Zuri sat hunched in the wooden chair, her baby pressed against her chest. Her cheek stung where Belinda's palm had landed a red mark, blooming like shame upon her skin. Little Tendo whimpered softly as though sensing the fear that clung to the air like smoke. Outside neighbors whispered in clusters. Some shook their heads with pity. Others muttered that trouble always follows the poor when they cross paths with the rich. That night, Zuri barely slept. Each creak of the building made her startle, afraid that Belinda might return with those men she had mentioned. She whispered to her baby as dawn painted streaks of pale gold on the cracked walls. My son, you will not inherit my fears, she said, voice trembling. You will grow strong. You will stand tall no matter how hard the world tries to push you down. When Cato arrived the next morning with his usual bag of groceries, the neighbors rushed to intercept him. Mama Dora, the same woman who had once warned Zuri, was the first to speak. Oga Abeg, come and see for yourself, she said, her voice carrying both indignation and worry. Your fine woman came here yesterday. She slapped the mother of your child, eh? Sorry, I mean the hawker. She nearly tore down the place. Cato's face tightened, the muscles in his jaw clenching like iron. Without waiting for further explanation, he strode up the stairs, 2 at a time. He found Zuri, pale, her face, bruised, her arms tightening protectively around Tendo. The sight pierced him deeper than any insult Belinda could hurl. Zuri, he said softly, crouching before her chair. Why didn't you call me? Her eyes shimmered with unshed tears. And say what, sir? That your fiancé came to finish what she started on the street. I didn't want to cause more trouble. Cato's chest burned. She is not my fiancé anymore. Not after what I saw, not after this. Zuri lowered her gaze. But the world will not believe me. They will say I trapped you. They will say the baby is yours, even when it is not. Cato touched the edge of her chair, his voice firm but gentle. Let them say what they wish. Truth cannot be buried forever. Later that evening, Cato confronted Belinda in the grand sitting room of the mansion that had once seemed destined to be their shared home. She sat on the leather sofa, legs crossed elegantly, but her eyes betrayed fear when he entered. Cato, please. I was only defending what's mine. He cut her off with a voice like stone. What's yours? Is cruelty yours? Is violence yours? You speak as though a car has more value than a life. You attacked a mother and her newborn. You disgraced yourself in front of an entire community. And now you dare to speak of what is yours. Tears welled, smearing her makeup. I did it for us. I thought she would steal you. You lost me not because of her, Cato said coldly, but because of the darkness in your own heart. I cannot marry a woman who strikes at the weak. It is over. When she fell to her knees, clutching his trousers, Cato stepped back. His heart had once beat with love for her, but now it beat with disgust. Meanwhile, Zuri's days at Maple Court grew heavier. Though grateful for safety, she carried a constant fear that Belinda would return. Each time footsteps echoed in the hallway, she tensed. Neighbors watched her with both sympathy and suspicion. One afternoon, Cato appeared again, his expression determined. You cannot stay here, he said. It is not safe. Belinda is desperate, and desperate people do dangerous things. Zuri shook her head. I cannot depend on you forever. People already talk. They say I am your secret. Then let them talk, he replied firmly. I will not abandon you. Come with me, at least until I can find another solution. Zuri hesitated, torn between pride and fear. But when little Tendo coughed in her arms, weak from the dust that seeped through the cracked windows, her resistance broke. Only until I can stand on my own, she murmured. Only until you are safe, Cato promised. The mansion gates opened like iron jaws, revealing gardens, trimmed with precision and fountains spraying silver arcs. Zuri's breath caught as the car rolled inside. She had never set foot in such a place. The walls gleamed marble-white chandeliers, glittered like captured stars, and servants in crisp uniforms greeted them with respectful bows. Carrying her baby, Zuri whispered under her breath, Lord, don't let me lose myself here. Cato introduced her as a temporary guest. This is Zuri, and this is her child Tendo. Treat them with the respect you would give me. The staff nodded, though a few exchanged quick glances of curiosity. Zuri pretended not to notice. She walked stiffly, clutching her baby tighter, afraid that any misstep would shatter this fragile arrangement. The first morning, Cato found her in the kitchen sleeves, rolled up scrubbing dishes. Zuri, he said startled, what are you doing? She looked up flustered. I cannot sit idle, sir. I must earn my place. You are not a servant here, he insisted. Please rest. Your body is still healing. But Zuri only smiled faintly. Rest is for those who can afford it. Work is all I know. Cato sighed but said nothing more. Yet each day he found her cleaning, cooking, or tending to the gardens. She seemed determined to repay kindness with labor, even when her back still ached from childbirth. As weeks passed, a rhythm formed. Each evening when Cato returned from his office, Zuri greeted him with a polite smile and placed Tendo in his arms. The baby's tiny hands reached for Cato, gurgling with joy. Slowly, without either of them naming it, a bond deepened. But gossip began to stir. One of the maids whispered to another, and soon the household buzzed with speculation. The master brings a woman with child into his home. Who is she, really? Word leaked beyond the gates. At a dinner with his parents, Cato faced the first storm. His mother, Madame Ose, fixed him with a piercing gaze across the table. Cato, is it true, she asked sharply, that you house a hawker and her child under your roof? Cato's fork paused midway. His father glanced nervously between them. It is true, Cato replied evenly. She needed help. I will not throw her to the wolves. Madame Ose's face hardened. A woman like that will stain our family name. End this nonsense before it destroys everything. Cato's voice sharpened. What destroys a family, mother, is not compassion but cruelty. Do not ask me to turn my back on justice. The table fell into tense silence. Back at the mansion, Zuri sensed the tension. She saw it in Cato's drawn face, in the way he sometimes stared at his phone, as though bracing for another battle. One night, when Tendo finally slept, she approached him quietly in the sitting room. Sir, forgive me. I never wanted to cause division in your family. Cato looked up, eyes weary but resolute. Do not apologize for existing, Zuri. The fault is not yours. If standing by you divides my family, then perhaps it is time for truth to reveal who we all are. Zuri's heart trembled. She lowered her gaze, unsure how to respond. But the storm outside grew louder. Belinda, humiliated by her broken engagement, began whispering poison into the ears of society. At social gatherings, she painted herself as the victim, claiming Cato had abandoned her for a scheming hawker. Newspapers soon carried rumors of a scandalous affair. One morning, Zuri opened the window to hear neighbors outside, murmuring, "Did you hear? The businessman shelters his mistress and her child." Shameful. Her cheeks burned. She closed the window quickly, clutching her baby as if shielding him from their words. That evening, she told Cato quietly, I cannot stay here. Your world and mine will never mix. People will never stop talking. Cato's eyes softened, but his voice was firm. Zuri, I did not save you to abandon you to gossip. I will protect you no matter the cost. Yet as he spoke, even he knew the battles ahead would not be fought with money or power alone. They would be fought with truth, with courage, and with the willingness to lose everything for what was right. And so in the heart of Eco West, two lives, once strangers, began to walk a path neither had chosen but both could no longer deny. It was a path that would test not just love but justice, dignity, and the power of redemption. The air in Eco West grew thicker with whispers. What had once been a scandal known only to one street in Sunrise Bridal Lane was now spilling into salons, offices, and the polished dining tables of the wealthy. People spoke in hushed tones but with eager lips. Cato Asare, the golden bachelor, is hiding a hawker with a child in his mansion. Some stories painted him a fool in love. Others called Zuri a schemer who used pity as a ladder. Inside the mansion walls, Zuri carried this weight like a hidden wound. She tried to remain invisible, moving silently between the nursery and the kitchen, always careful not to leave traces of herself where guests might notice. Yet no matter how quietly she moved, her existence was no longer a secret. One Thursday afternoon, Cato returned home earlier than usual. He found Zuri in the courtyard, kneeling by a small basin, washing Tendo's clothes. The late sun gilded her tired face, and her scarf clung to damp strands of hair. He stopped watching for a moment. Something in her quiet resilience struck him, how she endured every rumor without complaint, how she gave her son laughter, even when she herself had none to spare. Zuri, he said gently. She looked up, startled. Leave those. The maids can help. She shook her head quickly. They already do enough. Let me care for my child myself. That is one thing no one can take from me. Cato crouched beside her, dipping his hand into the soapy water before she could protest. Together they washed in silence, the domestic intimacy heavy with unspoken words. At last, Zuri broke the quiet. Cato, I should leave. The longer I stay, the more they will talk. I can work. I can sell bread or akara at the roadside. I will manage. His chest tightened. Zuri, you nearly died on that roadside. You will not return there. Not while I breathe. Her eyes shone with gratitude but also fear. People already think I am the reason you ended your engagement. They believe I bewitched you. Let them believe lies, he replied firmly. I know the truth, and the truth is enough for me. But Belinda would not rest. Humiliation gnawed at her pride, and envy consumed what was left of her reason. She hired men broad-shouldered with hard eyes and fists used to violence. One scorching afternoon, their car screeched to a halt outside Maple Court where Zuri had once lived. They stormed the compound, dragging her few belongings into the street, shouting accusations of witchcraft and theft. Out, Belinda, cried, her voice sharp as glass. She stood in a fitted yellow gown, sunglasses perched high like a crown. This house was paid for by my fiancé. I will not allow this rat to live here another day. Though Zuri no longer stayed at Maple Court, the sight of her belongings being thrown out felt like another eviction. Neighbors protested, but the men silenced them with threats. Baby clothes fluttered in the dust and a feeding bottle cracked on the pavement. Children cried at the commotion. By evening, word reached Cato. He stormed into the mansion to find Belinda, waiting lips painted into a triumphant smile, as though daring him to challenge her. "Why, Belinda?" he demanded, voice low but shaking with fury. "Why?" she laughed bitterly. "Because you humiliated me first. You brought a gutter woman into our circle and expected me to bow. Do you think I'll watch my life burn while she takes what's mine?" "She never took anything from you," Cato roared. "It was your own cruelty that destroyed us." Belinda's eyes narrowed. "Then I will destroy her too. You will regret choosing her over me." Her words landed like a curse. Cato knew then that Belinda would not stop until she had wrung every drop of misery from Zuri's life. 2 days later, Cato went to Maple Court carrying a bag of groceries for Zuri. He knocked on her door. Silence. He knocked again, louder. A neighbor appeared, pity in her eyes. "Oga, you no, your woman, no day here again." Confused, Cato asked, "What do you mean?" The woman lowered her voice. "Your wife came. She beat her, beat the baby too. Then she brought boys and threw their things outside. We never see them again." The words sliced Cato's heart. His voice dropped, trembling with cold anger. "Wife. She is not my wife." But the neighbor only shrugged. "That is what she said." That night, Cato returned home like a man carrying a mountain on his shoulders. Belinda sat in the living room scrolling her phone, her face perfectly composed. He stood before her, fists clenched at his side. "A few months ago," he said quietly, "I watched you slap a pregnant woman until her water broke. Today I learned you dragged her and her child into the street. Do you know what that makes you, Belinda? A monster." Her phone slipped from her hands. "Cato, please." He cut her off with a finality that left no air between them. "This relationship is over. Pack your things. Leave this house tonight. You will never again speak of me as your fiancé." Belinda dropped to her knees, sobbing. "Cato, no. People will laugh at me. My family, my name. I do not care," he thundered. He turned to the gatekeeper. "Throw her things out. Bar her from this house." As she wept, he walked away, pulling his phone from his pocket. His voice was like steel as he spoke into it. "Find her. Find Zuri and her son now." A week passed before the call came. "Sir, we found her. She is staying at a church in Aya." Cato was already dressed before the phone hit the table. He drove like a man chased by time, each red light burning his patience. At last he reached the modest church where he saw her beneath a tree, cradling Tendo in her lap. She looked thinner shadows under her eyes, but her face lit with shock when she saw him. "Cato," she whispered. He walked slowly, afraid she might vanish if he rushed. "Zuri, why didn't you answer my calls?" She looked away, her voice brittle. "Your wife came accusing me. She threw us out. I didn't want more trouble, so I stayed here." "She is not my wife," Cato said firmly. "Not anymore. I ended it. I will not let her hurt you again." Zuri shook her head. "I can manage. I don't need pity." He gave a faint, sad smile. "Then don't call it pity. Call it work. Be my maid if you must. At least then you and your son will be safe." After a long silence, Zuri sighed. Only for a while. And with that, a new chapter began. The mansion gates opened once more to admit Zuri, this time, not as a guest, but as part of the household. She was given a small room near the nursery, her duties described vaguely as helping where needed. Yet even as she folded laundry or dusted the shelves, Cato treated her with the same respect as before. The staff whispered, of course. Some suspected more than they saw, others pitied her resilience. But Zuri worked quietly, never demanding, never idle. One morning, Cato entered the kitchen to find her scrubbing the sink. "Zuri," he said, exasperated but amused. "Didn't I bring you here to rest?" She glanced over her shoulder, a playful spark in her tired eyes. "And if I rest too much, I'll grow lazy. Then who will chase your maids to work properly?" Cato chuckled despite himself. He had not laughed in weeks. As months passed, he found himself racing home earlier than usual. Not for work, not for solitude, but for the small joy of holding Tendo, of hearing the baby giggle and stretch his hands toward him. Slowly, without realizing it, the walls of his mansion began to echo with a different kind of life. But outside those walls, storms gathered. Belinda's fury had not burned out. She was plotting again, and this time she would strike harder. Because pride, once wounded, rarely dies quietly. The mansion had grown into something Zuri never imagined, a place of safety, laughter, and gentle routine. Each morning she rose early, bathed little Tendo, and carried him to the courtyard where sunlight fell soft through the tall almond trees. The child's giggles filled corners of the house that had long been silent. Even the maids, once suspicious of her, began to smile at the boy, sneaking him tiny sweets or rocking him when Zuri's hands were busy. Cato often found himself lingering at the doorway watching them. There was a warmth about Zuri, an authenticity that turned even the simplest moment into something luminous. Yet he remained careful with his words, sensing that Zuri's pride was as delicate as glass. He did not want her to think his kindness carried hidden debts. Still, the rumors outside brewed like storm clouds. His mother, Madame Ose, summoned him one evening. "Kato," she said in their sprawling dining hall, her voice sharp as the clink of crystal glasses. "The whispers are unbearable. Society says you abandoned a fine woman from a good family to live with a hawker. Do you know what that means for us?" Kato met her gaze steadily. "I know what it means for me. It means I chose justice over appearances." Her hand slammed the table. "Justice? You call this justice, bringing shame upon us? That girl will never belong. End this madness before it ruins your name." Kato's father, who had been silent, sighed heavily. Ose let the boy speak. Perhaps he sees something we don't. But Madame Ose would not be silenced. "No, I will not watch my son throw away his future for a woman beneath him. If you keep her, Kato, know this, you will do it without my blessing." The words struck, but Kato refused to flinch. Then so be it. Back in the mansion, Zuri sensed the tension pressing harder against Kato's shoulders each day. One night after Tendo had finally drifted to sleep, she knocked gently at his study door. "Kato," she said softly when he looked up, "I am causing division in your family. I cannot let this continue. Tomorrow I will move out. I have saved a little from the allowances you gave. It will be enough to start selling bread in the market." His chest tightened. "Zuri, you don't need to." "I do," she interrupted, her voice trembling. "You gave me shelter when no one else would. But I cannot stay under your roof forever. The more I stay, the more enemies I make for you. At least outside I will suffer alone." For a long moment he said nothing, only stared at her, with eyes darker than midnight. Then he leaned back, his voice low but steady. "If leaving will give you peace, I will not stop you. But remember this, you have a place here always. Not because I pity you, but because you and your son matter more than all their whispers combined." Her throat ached with unshed tears. She turned away quickly, afraid that if she lingered she would change her mind. The next morning, Zuri packed her few belongings into a small bag, strapped Tendo onto her back, and left the mansion quietly. She rented a single room in a crowded neighborhood where the walls were cracked and the air smelled of charcoal smoke. But it was hers, and that mattered. She used her small savings to start a bread stall, Sunrise Loaves, she named it, after the street where her suffering began. She rose before dawn, kneading dough by candlelight, and by midday her table was stacked with steaming loaves. The aroma drew passers-by, and soon her bread became known across the neighborhood. But with independence came hardship. Some days sales were slow. Some nights Tendo cried from fever, and Zuri stayed awake, praying his tiny body would not fail her. She carried her struggles quietly, never calling Kato, though his number sat etched in her mind. Still he found her. One evening he arrived at her stall, his car drawing stares from everyone around. Zuri froze flour, dusting her hands, embarrassment burning her cheeks. "Kato, what are you doing here?" she whispered urgently. "Checking on you," he said, simply lifting a loaf to his nose with a faint smile. "This is good bread." "It's enough," she said, her voice tight. "Enough for me and my son. That is all I need." He studied her face for a moment, then set the bread down gently. "If you ever need more, Zuri, you know where to find me." But trouble was never far. Belinda, though cast out, had not forgotten. Her once thriving boutique began to fail. Contracts dissolved, and friends abandoned her when the video of her striking Zuri at Sunrise Lane leaked online. Social media burned with fury. How can a woman so blessed act with such cruelty, people demanded. Belinda's empire collapsed, but her bitterness grew. "If I cannot rise," she muttered to herself, "then she will not rise either." One afternoon, as Zuri sold bread at her stall, Belinda appeared. She wore no jewelry this time, only a simple dress, but her eyes still glimmered with venom. "So it's true," she sneered. "You've turned yourself into the bread queen. From hawker to baker, how poetic." Zuri's heart raced, but she forced her voice steady. "What do you want, Belinda?" "What I've always wanted," Belinda hissed. "For you to disappear. You think you've won because Kato turned from me. You are nothing. You will always be nothing." Zuri clutched Tendo closer, but before she could respond, Belinda spat on the ground and stormed away, leaving customers murmuring uneasily. That night Zuri prayed longer than usual. "Lord, give me patience. Let me fight battles with dignity, not hatred. And if she ever seeks mercy, let me not harden my heart." 2 weeks later, destiny brought an unexpected twist. Kato's company held a charity event in the city square, distributing food to struggling families. Zuri, invited by one of the coordinators, brought loaves of her bread to share. She wore her plainest dress, but the crowd recognized her, the hawker who had once been humiliated and now stood tall. Midway through the event, a commotion stirred. Belinda appeared thinner than before, her eyes weary. She walked toward the stage, ignoring the whispers around her. "I have something to say," she announced, her voice trembling. Cato, startled, stepped forward. "Belinda." But she raised a hand. "No, let me finish. I was cruel. I was arrogant. I struck a woman who did me no harm, and I nearly cost her child's life. The world has seen my shame. I cannot erase it, but I can repent." She turned toward Zuri, who stood frozen with Tendo in her arms. "I am sorry. I wronged you. If you can find it in your heart to forgive, I will use what little I have left to fund scholarships for young mothers like you, so they can build lives without fear." The crowd gasped. Cameras flashed. Silence pressed in like a weight. Zuri's lips parted, her heart pounding. Slowly she stepped forward. "Belinda," she said softly, "you wounded me deeply. But hatred will not heal either of us. I forgive you. Not for your sake alone, but for my son's. He deserves a world where mercy still lives." The applause that followed shook the square. Madame Ose, who had been watching from the crowd, pressed a hand to her chest. Tears welled in her eyes as she finally saw the woman her son had chosen, one who could forgive even her greatest enemy. That night back at the mansion, Cato spoke to his parents again. This time his mother's voice was quieter. "She forgave her enemy," Madame Ose murmured. Perhaps I judged her too harshly." Cato's father smiled faintly. "At last you see what I saw. She is not beneath us, she lifts us." Cato exhaled, relief flooding him. For the first time he felt the storm was beginning to break. But he also knew this was only the beginning of a harder fight. To build a future with Zuri, he would need more than love. He would need to stand against every shadow that clung to their names. And he was ready. The days that followed the charity event carried a new rhythm, as though the city itself had shifted. The video of Belinda's public apology spread across Eco West, replayed on radios, televisions, and every phone in the market. Zuri's quiet grace in forgiving her enemy became the talk of the town. For the first time, strangers looked at her not with suspicion but with respect. Yet inside Zuri's heart, humility kept her grounded. She still woke before dawn, kneading dough, baking loaves in her small clay oven, and wrapping them in paper while Tendo babbled at her feet. She expanded the stall, employing 2 young women from the neighborhood who had once sold sachet water like she used to. She trained them patiently, teaching them not just how to bake, but also how to greet customers with dignity. "This is not just bread," she told them one morning, her hands dusted with flour. "It is survival. And survival must wear the face of pride, not shame." They nodded, eyes wide, as though listening to a sermon. At the mansion, life for Cato shifted as well. Business associates who once gossiped about him began to speak differently. Some praised his courage to walk away from a toxic engagement. Others admitted in hushed tones that they admired his integrity, but not all voices were kind. In the boardrooms of Eco West, whispers remained. How can a man of his standing tie himself to a hawker? One evening, after a grueling meeting, Cato returned home to find Zuri in the courtyard with Tendo. The boy, now crawling, clutched at the grass, giggling as Zuri clapped to encourage him. The scene melted the day's weight from Cato's shoulders. He crouched beside them. "He's strong," Cato said, lifting Tendo into the air until the baby squealed with laughter. "He is your namesake," Zuri replied softly. "Strength follows his name." For a moment, silence stretched between them. Cato's gaze lingered on Zuri, her face tired yet radiant, her smile small but steady. Something inside him swelled, pressing against his chest, demanding release. "Zuri," he began, voice low, "I cannot keep hiding what I feel. Since the day I saw you suffer on that street, my heart has not been the same. I tried to tell myself it was pity, responsibility, but it is more. I love you." Zuri froze, her breath catching. She turned her gaze away, her lips tightening. "Don't, Cato. Don't say what should not be said." "Why not?" he pressed. "It is the truth." Her voice trembled. "Because love like that is dangerous. It builds hope where there should be caution. You are a man of wealth of name. I am a woman whose only inheritance is shame. People will never accept me. Your own mother." Cato reached for her hand, stopping her words. "My mother's acceptance is not the measure of my heart. Zuri, I want you, not the approval of a world too blind to see worth." Her hand quivered in his, but she pulled away gently. "Cato, I cannot be your weakness. I refuse to be the reason your family crumbles. Please, do not ask me for what I cannot give." She rose quickly, scooping Tendo into her arms. Her footsteps faded into the house, leaving Kato staring at the night sky, his heart torn between determination and despair. The next day, Madame Osei summoned her relatives. In the grand sitting room of the Osei estate, uncles and aunties filled the chairs, their voices rising with judgment. "She is too old for him," Uncle Mensa declared, shaking his head. "A single mother with a bastard child. What kind of legacy is that?" "She is poor," Auntie Amma added. "How will she stand among us at banquets and galas? She will embarrass the family." Kato listened silently at first, his jaw tightening. Finally he rose, his voice slicing through the clamor. "Uncle Mensa," he said, turning sharply, "did you not marry Auntie Afua when you had nothing? Was she not the one who fed you while you built your business? Do you call her baggage now?" The room fell quiet. Uncle Mensa cleared his throat and looked away. "And you," Auntie Amma Kato continued, "was it not you who once told me you were a widow with 2 children before Uncle Kwame married you? Did he see shame in you, or did he see worth?" Auntie Amma's lips pressed into silence, her face burning. One by one, their arguments withered under the weight of truth. Only Madame Osei remained unmoved, her eyes sharp. "You may silence them, Kato," she said coldly, "but you cannot silence me. That woman will never enter this family with my blessing." Kato met her gaze squarely. "Then I will marry without it." The room gasped. Auntie Amma clutched her chest. Uncle Mensa muttered under his breath, but Kato stood unshaken, his voice firm as iron. "I will not abandon Zuri because of your pride. Love is not measured in bank accounts or family names. If you cannot see that, then perhaps you are the one who has lost dignity." News of the confrontation spread quickly, and soon the entire city buzzed. Some condemned Kato, saying he had insulted his elders. Others admired his courage to stand by his heart. Zuri, however, was torn. She feared that every step she took with Kato deepened the rift between him and his family. She thought of leaving again, but each time she saw Tendo's eyes light up at Kato's presence, her resolve crumbled. The bond between father figure and child grew stronger each day, even though Kato was not truly Tendo's father. One night Zuri sat alone whispering prayers. "God, guide me. If this love is a blessing, give me courage. If it is a curse, give me strength to walk away." Her tears fell silently, soaking into the pillow beside her sleeping son. Meanwhile, Belinda's name was once again on people's tongues, but now as a fallen star. She walked through markets without the trail of admirers she once commanded. Old clients avoided her. Her boutique closed. Yet bitterness remained smoldering like coals under ash. At a small cafe, she confided in a friend. "Kato will regret choosing her. I may have lost everything, but I will not lose my pride. If I must burn the city with scandal, I will." But her friend only shook her head. "Belinda, humility could save you. Revenge will bury you." Belinda's laugh was hollow. "Then let it bury me, but I will not fall alone." Back at Sunrise, Loaves Zuri's bread business blossomed. Her loaves sold out each day, and customers praised not just the taste, but the way she treated them with patience, with respect. Even children gathered laughing as she slipped them tiny buns for free. Kato often visited quietly buying bread, not because he needed it, but because he wanted her to see. He stood with her, even in her smallness. Together they planned to expand the stall into a shop. But though success was budding, Zuri's heart remained restless. Love was knocking on her door, but fear kept her hand from opening it. And Kato, determined yet patient, knew that the battle ahead was no longer just against Belinda or gossip. It was against the walls Zuri had built around her own heart. He was ready to fight them all. For he knew that love like bread was kneaded in pain, baked in fire, and served only when truly risen. The weeks after the family council were heavy with silence. Though Kato had stood firm against the criticism of his uncles and aunts, their disapproval lingered like smoke after a fire. Madame Osei especially moved around the house like a storm cloud. Each time she looked at her son, her lips tightened as though she carried a curse she refused to release. But Zuri's life was shifting in quieter ways. Sunrise Loaves, her humble bread stall, had grown into a small bakery. With Kato's discreet financial support and her own relentless determination, she rented a modest shop along a bustling roadside. The smell of warm bread drew workers on their way to jobs, school children with coins clutched in their hands, and mothers carrying market baskets. Each morning, Zuri rose before the cock crowed. She tied a wrapper tightly around her waist-kneaded dough with strong arms and whispered prayers over each batch. "Let this bread carry dignity into the homes that eat it," she murmured. She hired 2 young women, Abeni and Chika, both from struggling families, to help her knead and sell. She trained them with patience, reminding them to smile at customers even when the sun burned their backs. Bread feeds the body, she told them one morning, brushing flour from her brow, but kindness feeds the heart. If we serve both, then we are not just bakers, we are healers. The young women nodded, inspired. Slowly, word of Zuri's bakery spread. Some customers came not just for the bread, but for the atmosphere she created, where every person, rich or poor, was treated with respect. Still, gossip was not silenced. As her success grew, so did murmurs. "Ah, you see, the businessman gave her money. That is why she is shining." Others muttered, "She is clever. She trapped him with pity, and now she eats where she did not sow." Zuri heard these whispers often, but she chose not to answer them. Instead, she focused on kneading dough, raising her son, and building her bakery. Yet at night, when she lay on her mat with Tendo asleep beside her, the words gnawed at her pride. "Maybe they are right," she whispered into the dark. "Maybe, without Kato, I am nothing." Her heart battled between gratitude and fear, affection and doubt. She thought of leaving Eco West, entirely starting afresh in a city where no one knew her past. But then she would glance at Tendo's face, peaceful in slumber, and remember that running was not the answer. One Thursday evening, as the bakery closed, Kato arrived. He carried not his usual quiet smile, but a heaviness in his step. Zuri noticed immediately. "Kato," she said gently, pouring him a glass of cold water. "What troubles you?" He leaned against the wooden counter, his shoulders sagging. "My mother, she has not forgiven me. Each day she throws words sharper than knives. She says if I marry you, she will never step foot in my home again." Zuri's chest ached. "I told you, Kato, I do not want to be the cause of division. If being with me costs you your family, then—" "Stop," he interrupted firmly, setting the glass down with a sharp click. "Zuri, I am a grown man. I built my business from nothing. If my mother chooses pride over love, that is her burden to carry, not mine. You are not the cause of division, you are the proof of my freedom." His words stunned her. She turned away, her eyes brimming with tears. "Freedom has a cost, and I am afraid it is too heavy." He stepped closer, his hand almost touching her arm, but hesitating out of respect. "Zuri, love is always costly, but it is worth everything." For a heartbeat, silence wrapped around them. Then Tendo's giggle broke the moment as he crawled from the mat in the corner toward Kato, stretching his arms. Kato bent, scooping him up with ease. The boy squealed, pressing his tiny hands against Kato's face. Zuri watched them, her heart torn between fear and longing. Perhaps she thought this was what family truly looked like, messy, fragile, but real. Yet shadows still lingered. Belinda, though disgraced, had not disappeared. She prowled in bitterness, watching from a distance. One of her former employees, desperate for money, whispered to her about Zuri's bakery and its growing reputation. "So she thinks she is a queen now," Belinda muttered, her lips curling. "Bread will not save her when I am finished." Her schemes returned darker than before. She paid men to spread lies that Zuri's bread was baked with spoiled flour, that children fell sick after eating it. She bribed a local health officer to threaten closure. For days, customers hesitated, sales dipped, and fear clawed at Zuri's chest. But one evening, a group of mothers from the neighborhood gathered at the bakery. They confronted the officer, shouting, "This bread has fed our children for months. Not one has fallen ill. If you lie against her, we will stand as witnesses." The officer, startled by the crowd's loyalty, retreated. Zuri stood at the doorway, tears sliding down her cheeks as she whispered, "Thank you." One of the mothers, Mama Fola, patted her shoulder. "You have given us dignity, Zuri. Now we give it back to you." That night, as Zuri closed the shop, Kato arrived. He had heard of the incident. His eyes burned with anger. "Belinda again," he said bitterly. "She will not stop until she destroys you." Zuri shook her head. "Let her rage. I will not curse her back. If she wants to fight with lies, then I will answer with truth." Kato stared at her, admiration softening his fury. "Do you know what strength that takes? Most people, including me, would have fought fire with fire." "Fire only spreads fire," she replied. "But water puts it out." He smiled faintly. "You are my water, Zuri. The calm I never knew I needed." She looked away quickly, afraid of the emotions rising between them. Yet her heart thudded loudly, betraying her secret longing. One weekend, Kato invited Zuri and Tendo to accompany him to a company event. At first she refused, saying she had no clothes worthy of such gatherings. But he insisted, and eventually, with his help, she wore a simple but elegant gown of sky blue fabric. When they entered the hall, whispers rippled. Some stared in disbelief, others with admiration. Madame Osei was present, seated at the high table, her eyes narrowing at the sight of Zuri. But as the evening wore on, people approached praising Zuri's bakery, telling her how her bread had touched the community. At one point, a young girl ran up to her clutching a small bun. "Auntie, thank you. Your bread makes my mornings happy." The crowd chuckled warmly. Zuri's cheeks flushed, but her smile glowed. Cato glanced at his mother. Mademoiselle's face was tight, but her eyes betrayed something, a crack in her armor, perhaps the first seed of acceptance. Later that night, back at the mansion, Cato walked Zuri to her room. The corridor was quiet, the air heavy, with words unsaid. "Zuri," he said softly, "did you see them tonight? The people who respect you, not because of me, but because of who you are. You are no longer the hawker they mocked. You are the woman who turned pain into bread, shame into honor." She looked up at him, her eyes shimmering. "And yet I am still afraid. Afraid of wanting too much, of losing what little I have built." He stepped closer, his voice tender. "Then let me carry your fear with you. You don't have to walk alone anymore." For the first time, she did not turn away. She let her gaze linger on his, and in that silence something fragile but undeniable bloomed between them. But far away in the dim corner of her rented room, Belinda watched the news coverage of the event on her cracked phone screen. She saw Zuri in her blue gown, saw the crowd's admiration, saw Cato's gaze that never strayed from her. Belinda's hand tightened into a fist. "So this is how it is," she whispered. "If I cannot break her, then I will break him. Let us see if love can survive what I'm about to unleash." Her eyes gleamed with a dangerous light. The next storm was already gathering. The storm did not wait long. Within a week, Belinda's scheme began to unfurl like poisonous smoke. She contacted a journalist from Eco Daily, a man who thrived on scandal. In exchange for money she barely had left, she handed him doctored photographs, pictures of Zuri entering and leaving Cato's mansion, paired with captions suggesting she was his mistress long before his engagement ended. The headline blazed the next morning: "Business mogul Cato Assar kept secret lover in child in mansion during engagement, fiancé betrayed." Copies spread through the markets, plastered across kiosks, whispered in taxis. Neighbors at Zuri's bakery stared differently, some with sympathy, others with judgment. The young apprentices Abeni and Chica hid the newspaper when they saw her approach, but Zuri caught the headline anyway. Her chest constricted. She closed her shop early that day, clutching Tendo tightly to her chest as though he might shield her from shame. At the mansion, Cato stormed into his office, slamming the newspaper onto his desk. His jaw was clenched so tight his teeth ached. "Belinda," he muttered through gritted teeth. "This is her doing." His assistant Chuma shifted nervously. "Sir, what will you do? The board is restless. Investors are asking questions." Cato's eyes burned. "I will not let lies dictate my life. Call a press conference, tonight." That evening, the hall was packed with journalists. Cameras flashed as Cato walked to the podium, his face stern but calm. He held up the newspaper. This, he began, as a lie. A cruel fabrication meant to smear not only me, but an innocent woman and her child. Yes, I helped Zuri when she was in distress. Yes, she lives under my protection because she was nearly killed by the same person I once thought I loved. That person is Belinda. Gasps filled the room. Reporters scribbled furiously. Cato continued, his voice unwavering. "I broke my engagement with Belinda because of her cruelty. I watched her strike a pregnant woman until her water broke, and I could no longer marry a woman who had no heart. If protecting a mother and child is considered scandal, then let me be scandalous. I will not apologize for compassion." The crowd erupted with questions, but his words had already landed. By morning, social media blazed with hashtags number Justice for Zuri, number Cato stands tall. Zuri, however, was shaken. She watched the broadcast from her small room at the bakery. Though Cato's defense lifted her in the eyes of the public, she feared what it meant privately. Would his defiance of Belinda and society's whispers cost him everything he had built? That night he appeared at her door. She opened it hesitantly, Tendo asleep on her back. "Why do you fight for me so fiercely?" she asked softly before he could even sit. Cato's eyes locked onto hers. "Because you are worth fighting for. Zuri, I have stood in rooms full of men with millions, and none of them carried the strength you do. You turned humiliation into honor. You forgave the woman who nearly destroyed you. You raised dignity from dust. How can I not fight for you?" Her eyes brimmed with tears. She turned away, whispering, "You don't understand. Love is not enough. Your family, your society, they will never truly accept me. I will always be the hawker in their eyes." He stepped closer, his voice low but insistent. "Then let me be the man who changes their eyes. I do not want anyone else, Zuri. I want you." The air between them thickened, her heart pounding as though echoing Tendo's quiet breaths. She shook her head slowly. If you mean these words, then prove it not with speeches, but with actions. I will, he vowed, even if I must stand against my own blood. The confrontation with his family came sooner than expected. Madame Osei called for a meeting at the Osei ancestral home, summoning elders, cousins, and distant relatives. The air was tense, thick with tradition and pride. Kato stood before them all, his posture unwavering. Zuri was not present, but her spirit hung in the room. You disgrace us, Madame Osei, declared her voice sharp as glass. To defy your mother, to bring shame upon our lineage with a hawker. Have you lost your senses? Kato inhaled deeply before replying. Mother, I have not lost my senses. I have found them. For years I lived by appearances, by what society demanded. But appearances cannot comfort you in the night. They cannot hold your hand when the world turns cold. Zuri has shown me more honor in poverty than Belinda ever did in wealth. Uncle Kwame scoffed. So you throw away legacy for love? Foolishness. Kato turned his gaze on him sharply. Legacy without humanity is nothing. What good is a mansion if its master has no heart? What good is wealth if it cannot defend the weak? Some murmured agreement. Auntie Grace leaned forward, her eyes soft. Let him marry who he chooses. Did we not raise him to be a man of integrity? Should we now punish him for living it? The elders argued long into the night. Some sided with Madame Osei, others with Kato. Finally, his father raised his hand for silence. I have listened, he said, and I see truth in my son's words. If Zuri has such strength, then perhaps she is the blessing we did not expect. I will not oppose this union. The room erupted in noise, but Kato stood tall, relief coursing through him. For the first time, he felt a corner of the mountain lift from his shoulders. Meanwhile, Belinda's bitterness spiraled. Her name was now a curse in business circles. Old friends crossed the street to avoid her. At night, she stared at her reflection in the cracked mirror, whispering, It should have been me. It was mine. He was mine. Yet even she could not silence the truth. The world had seen her cruelty and the world had turned away. Days later, Kato visited Zuri at the bakery again. She was kneading dough, sweat shining on her brow when he entered. Why do you always find me with flour on my hands? She teased, trying to mask her nervousness. Because that is where your strength lives, he replied, smiling faintly. Then in the middle of the busy shop with Abeni and Chika staring wide-eyed, he knelt. From his pocket, he drew a small velvet box. Inside was not a diamond ring that shouted wealth, but a simple gold band, humble yet bright. Zuri, he said, voice steady though his heart thundered. I do not care what the world says. I do not care if society scorns us. I have chosen you. Will you marry me? The bakery fell silent. Customers leaned in, apprentices froze mid-task. Zuri's breath caught her hands trembling as flour dusted the air like snow. Tendo, strapped to her back, let out a small laugh, as though nudging her to answer. Tears slid down her cheeks. Kato, I am afraid. He looked up at her, his eyes unwavering. Then let me be your courage. For a long moment she said nothing. Then at last she whispered yes. The room erupted with cheers. Abeni clapped wildly, Chika squealed, and even strangers shouted blessings. Kato rose, slipping the band onto her finger. It gleamed in the light, small yet powerful. Zuri wiped her tears, whispering, May this ring not just bind us, but remind us to never forget where we began. Kato smiled, pulling her into his arms, Tendo between them, their laughter and tears mixing like bread and water, separate yet inseparable. Outside, the world still whispered. But inside the bakery, a new chapter had begun. The news of Zuri's acceptance spread faster than the scent of her fresh bread. By dawn the next morning, the streets around Sunrise Loaves buzzed with voices, some filled with joy, others with envy. Mothers from the neighborhood congratulated her with warm embraces, saying, At last, justice has smiled on you. But not everyone smiled. Whispers carried on the wind, a hawker turning into a madam. The world has truly turned upside down. Zuri tried to ignore the murmurs, focusing instead on kneading dough, while Tendo played with a wooden spoon beside her. Yet inside, her heart anxiety gnawed. She was about to step into a world she had never dreamed of. And though love bound her to Kato, she feared the storm of expectation that awaited. Preparations for the wedding began, and with them new tensions. Kato's relatives argued endlessly about tradition. Some insisted the ceremony must be lavish to erase the shame of scandal. Others muttered that it should be small to hide what they considered a blemish. Madame Osei was the hardest to sway. Though her husband and a few relatives now supported Kato's choice, she remained cold. One evening, she confronted her son in the ancestral living room, the golden chandelier above, throwing sharp light on her stern face. Cato, she said, her voice edged with steel. Do you truly understand what you are doing? This marriage will follow you all your life. You will walk into banquets with a woman who once sold water on the roadside. People will laugh. Cato leaned forward, his voice calm but firm. Let them laugh. Their laughter does not feed me. Their laughter does not raise Tendo. Mother, you taught me that family is built on honor. Zuri has more honor in her scars than Belinda ever had in her jewels. Madame Ose's eyes flickered, but she pressed her lips tight, refusing to yield. Do as you wish, but know this, I will not give her the respect of calling her daughter until she proves herself worthy. Cato straightened, unshaken. Then watch closely, Mother, because she will. Meanwhile, Belinda's downfall continued. Once draped in golden followers, she now walked alone. Her boutique had shut its doors, her accounts dwindled, and even her closest friends turned their backs. At night, she stared at her reflection, haunted by memories of her former glory. But bitterness still poisoned her heart. She whispered to herself, if I cannot rise again, then I will drag them down with me. Zuri will not wear white while I wear ashes. She reached out to an old acquaintance, a ruthless gossip broker known as Kwaku. For a fee, he promised to dig into Zuri's past to find any stain that could ruin her reputation. Belinda agreed, her last savings slipping away like sand through fingers. While enemies schemed, Zuri's bakery grew into a beacon of hope. With Cato's encouragement, she hired more women, widows, abandoned mothers, girls who had once been hawkers like her. She trained them, paid them fairly, and reminded them daily, your hands are not weak, they carry strength. This bread is more than food, it is survival, it is dignity. One afternoon, a young apprentice, barely 16, broke down in tears as she kneaded dough. Auntie Zuri, I thought I was useless, but now I feel like I have a future. Zuri hugged her tightly. Child, you are never useless. You are rising. And when you rise, you must lift others with you. Word of Sunrise Loaves as a place of hope spread even further, softening even some of the harshest critics. For the first time, Zuri began to believe that perhaps she was not just surviving, she was transforming. The wedding day arrived under the blaze of a golden Sunday. Unlike the opulent feasts of the wealthy, Zuri and Cato chose a simpler ceremony held in the courtyard of the mansion. The air shimmered with music, the laughter of children, and the fragrance of food prepared by women from Zuri's bakery. Guests wore bright colors, and neighbors from Maple Court, who had once pitied Zuri, now came to bless her with songs and ululations. Zuri wore a gown of soft ivory, simple yet radiant. A veil brushed her shoulders, and her old bead bracelet, once a symbol of her suffering, glittered faintly on her wrist. As she walked down the aisle, holding Tendo, whispers rippled. From hawker to bride, who could have imagined? Cato stood waiting, dressed in a deep blue suit, his gaze locked on her, as though the crowd had vanished. When she reached him, he took Tendo in one arm and Zuri's hand in the other. His voice trembled as he spoke his vows. Zuri, you walked into my life through fire and pain, but you brought me water for my soul. I vow to protect you, to honor you, and to stand beside you even when the world turns against us. Tears spilled down Zuri's cheeks. Her reply was steady, filled with the strength of all her trials. Cato, I was nothing but dust when you found me. You gave me shelter, but more than that, you gave me dignity. I vow to walk with you, not behind you, not ahead, but beside you, always. The applause that followed was thunderous, echoing into the sky. Even Madame Ose, seated stiffly in the front row, could not stop her eyes from misting. She turned her face away quickly, unwilling to let anyone see the crack in her armor. After the ceremony, the reception buzzed with joy. Children danced in circles, elders blessed the couple, and the bakery women served trays of steaming bread alongside delicacies. Laughter rose like incense, and for a moment Zuri forgot all the pain that had led her here. But Belinda had not forgotten. Dressed in plain clothes to avoid recognition, she slipped into the crowd with Kwaku at her side. They carried papers, false documents, claiming that Zuri had once been involved in theft during her hawking days. Their plan was to hand them to journalists at the reception to shatter Zuri's honor at the very moment of her triumph. Yet fate intervened. As Belinda pushed through the crowd, she tripped on a child's toy and fell forward. The papers scattered across the ground. Guests rushed to help her up, and in the scramble, someone picked up the documents. An old man examined them, frowning. "This is nonsense," he declared loudly. "Forged lies. I know this girl Zuri. She once sold water at my market. She never stole a thing. She worked harder than 10 men. Whoever made this is a liar." Gasps spread as people turned on Belinda. Murmurs rose. Is that not the same woman who slapped Zuri at Sunrise Lane? Why is she here? Faces hardened, voices sharpened. Shame on you, leave this place. Belinda's cheeks burned with humiliation as the crowd forced her out. Kwaku fled, dropping his bag of tricks. Once again, Belinda's scheme had collapsed under the weight of truth. From the stage, Zuri had seen everything. Instead of gloating, she lifted her voice so all could hear. Do not curse her. She has already cursed herself enough. Let us pray she finds peace. The crowd fell silent, struck by her mercy. Even Madame Ose's eyes widened, the last walls of her resistance crumbling. Later that evening, as the sun set in hues of orange and purple, Zuri sat beside Kato in the courtyard. Tendo slept peacefully in her lap, his tiny chest rising and falling with steady breaths. Madame Ose approached slowly. Her steps were heavy, as though carrying years of pride. She stopped before Zuri, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. My daughter, she whispered the words rough but sincere, forgive me. I judged you wrongly. Today you showed me strength I did not know existed. If you will have me, I will be your mother. Zuri's throat tightened. She rose, bowing her head respectfully. Mother, I forgave you long ago. Today I welcome you. The older woman pulled her into a trembling embrace, and for the first time Zuri felt the weight of rejection lift fully from her shoulders. As night wrapped the mansion in soft shadows, laughter and music still echoing, Zuri realized something profound. Her journey had come full circle. From hawking under the blazing sun to humiliation and despair to forgiveness and triumph, she had risen not alone but with love at her side. But destiny was not finished. In the months ahead, new challenges would test their union, new trials would demand their courage. Yet for now, beneath the stars of Eco West, Zuri allowed herself to rest. Her scars had become her crown, her pain had become her strength, and her story had only just begun. The morning after the wedding dawned with a stillness that felt almost sacred. Sunlight spilled gently across the Ose mansion, casting long golden shadows on the marble floors. Zuri woke in a room that was no longer borrowed, no longer a space she tiptoed through with caution but her own. She lay for a moment listening to the soft rhythm of Tendo's breathing in his crib beside her bed. For the first time in years, she felt safe. Yet peace rarely lasts forever. By midday, the mansion hummed with visitors, friends, extended relatives, even dignitaries curious to witness the union that had stirred so much gossip. Some came with genuine blessings, others with eyes sharp as blades waiting to measure Zuri against their expectations. She received them all with grace, her voice soft but steady, her smile humble yet unshaken. Madame Ose watched from the corner, her heart torn. Pride still whispered that her son deserved a better bride, but the evidence of Zuri's character spoke louder. Each time she saw the way Zuri held her head high, how she greeted each guest with respect, her resistance melted further. In the following weeks, life began to settle into new rhythms. Zuri managed both her role in the mansion and her bakery with relentless energy. Rather than abandon Sunrise Loaves, she expanded it. With Kato's support, she bought larger ovens, delivery vans, and opened a second branch in the heart of the city. The women she employed doubled, each one a story of resilience. Widows, single mothers, even abandoned daughters all found new beginnings under Zuri's guidance. Madam, one of them told her, tears in her eyes, you have turned our tears into bread. Zuri simply smiled. No, my sisters, you needed your own strength. I only gave you a table to rise upon. The bakery's reputation soared. Journalists who once chased scandal now wrote of the bread queen, a woman who transformed pain into power. Zuri's story became a symbol across Eco West that dignity could be reclaimed, that love could rebuild even what cruelty had broken. But shadows lingered. Belinda had disappeared from public sight after her humiliation at the wedding, but rumors whispered that she was not gone. Some said she had left the city. Others claimed they saw her wandering with men who thrived on crime and desperation. Kato kept silent, watch hiring discreet eyes to ensure she could not harm Zuri again. One evening he found Zuri in the courtyard rocking Tendo, as the boy drifted into sleep. You are troubled, she said, gently sensing his mood. Belinda, he admitted. I don't trust her silence. Sometimes a quiet enemy is more dangerous than a loud one. Zuri's gaze softened. Then let us not meet hatred with fear. If she returns, we will face her, together. Her words calmed him, though unease remained in his chest. Months passed, and Zuri's influence grew beyond bread. She started a foundation for struggling mothers, offering small loans and vocational training. She worked with midwives to create safe clinics for women in labor, determined that no one else would face the kind of desperation she had once endured on Sunrise Lane. Her work drew praise from unexpected places. The governor's wife invited her to speak at a women's summit. Schools asked her to mentor young girls. Even those who had once mocked her whispered admiration. But with recognition came new pressure. Paparazzi followed her. Critics dissected her every move. Some insisted she was a saint. Others called her a cunning opportunist. Zuri bore it all with quiet endurance, though in private she sometimes wept into Cato's shoulder. "I never asked to be a symbol," she confessed one night. He kissed her forehead. "Symbols are not chosen, they are forged. And you, Zuri, were born from fire." Yet it was not only society that tested her. Inside the mansion, the challenges of family life grew sharper. Madame Osei, though softened, still clung to fragments of her pride. She corrected Zuri at dinners, questioned her choices for Tendo's schooling, and whispered disapproval at her simple clothing. One evening after such a confrontation, Zuri sat alone in her room, her heart heavy. Cato found her there, eyes wet with tears. "Maybe your mother will never accept me fully," she said brokenly. "Maybe I will always be a stranger in this house." Cato knelt before her, taking her hands firmly. "Listen to me, Zuri. You are not a stranger, you are my wife. This house is as much yours as it is mine. My mother's journey is her own, but it cannot undo what we have built. Stand tall, love. That is the only answer to pride." Her tears slowed and strength returned to her eyes. The true turning point came months later when Zuri gave birth again, this time to twin daughters. The mansion erupted with joy. The babies, tiny and perfect, drew even Madame Osei's hardened heart into surrender. When she held them, her stern face softened, her arms trembling as she whispered blessings over them. For the first time, she turned to Zuri and said, "Thank you, my daughter." The words broke something inside Zuri. She wept openly, not from weakness, but from the relief of years of rejection finally dissolving. From that day, Madame Osei treated her with genuine warmth, calling her daughter without hesitation. But destiny was not finished shaping their story. One afternoon, news arrived that Belinda had been arrested in a nearby city, caught attempting to scam a wealthy businessman with false property papers. The city buzzed with the scandal, but Zuri's reaction was quiet sorrow. "Pride destroyed her," she murmured. "If only she had chosen forgiveness instead of revenge." Cato, standing beside her, nodded slowly. "We cannot save everyone, Zuri, but you saved me and countless others who look up to you. That is enough." Years passed, and the mansion's walls echoed with laughter, the patter of small feet, and the smell of bread that Zuri continued to bake, even when she no longer needed to. Her bakery empire expanded across Eco West, but she never abandoned the small stall on Sunrise Lane. "Here is where it began," she often told her children. "Never despise small beginnings. Even the grandest tree began as a seed." Her children grew under her in Cato's guidance, learning not only wealth but humility, not only privilege but compassion. Neighbors whispered blessings, saying, "Her story has become a song of hope." One evening, as the family gathered for dinner, Cato raised his glass. "To Zuri," he declared, "the woman who taught us that scars are not shame, they are strength. May our children and their children after them always remember her courage." Everyone lifted their glasses, and Zuri, cheeks warm with tears, could only smile. Her journey from hawker to hawk-eyed matriarch was complete. She had faced humiliation, betrayal, and storms of gossip. She had forgiven enemies, rebuilt dignity, and built a legacy that outshone gold. In the quiet of her heart, she knew the truth. She had not just survived, she had risen. And in rising, she had given countless others the courage to rise too. Life is never without storms. Sometimes cruelty and arrogance strike us down, leaving us broken on the pavement. But dignity is not lost when you fall. It is lost only when you refuse to rise again. Zuri's story reminds us that forgiveness is stronger than revenge and resilience, more powerful than pride. From hawking water to building empires, she showed that one act of kindness, one heart that refuses to harden, can transform not just a life, but generations to come. So, dear viewer, what lesson speaks to you most today? Share your thoughts in the comments and let us know where in the world you're watching from. If Zuri's journey moved, you don't forget to subscribe so you never miss another story of courage, love, and redemption.